Very good morning. We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi says Global South is ready to take big responsibility on global issues. He says 2 summits in a year echo call for autonomy and global influence. First consignment of fuel entered Gaza from Egypt after Israel agreed to allow limited deliveries to end communications blackout. Finland closes Russia border post to stem migrant inflow. The International Court of Justice orders Azerbaijan to ensure the safety of Nagorno-Karabakh people. All right, now news in detail. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said Global South is ready to take big responsibilities on the global issues. Speaking at the concluding leaders session of the second Voice of Global South Summit in New Delhi, PM Modi said 2 summits of the Global South in a year sent a big message to the world that the Global South wants its voice should be heard on global governance.
साल के भीतर ग्लोबल साउथ की 2 समिट होना और उसमें बड़ी संख्या में आप सभी का जुड़ना अपने आप में दुनिया के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा मैसेज है। ये मैसेज है कि ग्लोबल साउथ अपनी ऑटोनॉमी चाहता है। ये मैसेज है कि ग्लोबल साउथ ग्लोबल गवर्नेंस में अपनी आवाज चाहता है। ये मैसेज है कि ग्लोबल साउथ वैश्विक मामलों में बड़ी जिम्मेदारी लेने के लिए तैयार है। एक्सेलेंसी, आज इस समिट ने हमें एक बार फिर अपनी साझा अपेक्षाओं और आकांक्षाओं पर चर्चा करने का अवसर दिया है।
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also spoken about the environment conservation. He stressed on the need to make environment justice, shared responsibility and strength the base of climate action. He also emphasized that Global South should keep them away from trap of death to keep their sovereignty.
डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंस के लिए हम कंसल्टेटिव, डिमांड ड्रिवन और पीपल सेंट्रिक प्रयासों को प्राथमिकता देते हैं। ये अनिवार्य है कि ग्लोबल साउथ के देश डेट ट्रैप में न फंसे, किसी भी देश की संप्रभुता कमजोर न हो।
An Indian Foreign Secretary Vinay Mohan Quatra, speaking at a media briefing on Friday, talked about the second voice of the Global South Summit. He said that the second edition of the summit picked up the momentum of the first edition. Listen in.
Building on the momentum of the achievements of the first Global South Summit with the strong leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, it was decided to hold this second summit, Voice of Global South Summit today. The summit, like the first summit, had leader sessions, the inaugural and the concluding sessions, and also the 8 ministerial sessions, which included 2 sessions of the foreign ministers, one devoted to the larger developments around the world and how they impact Global South, and second more on developmental agenda of the Global South. There were also 1 ministerial sessions each of education, finance, environment, energy, health and commerce.
All right, update now on Israel-Hamas conflict. The first consignment of fuel entered Gaza from Egypt late on Friday after Israel agreed to a U.S. request to allow limited deliveries to end a communications blackout that has halted aid convoys for 2 days. The U.S. government has said that the agreement amounts to around 140,000 litres every 2 days, 120,000 of which will be used to fuel aid vehicles and other humanitarian efforts, with the remainder to power communication networks. Meanwhile, telecom services have been partially restored in Gaza after the entry of a limited quantity of fuel through UNRWA. Earlier, Israel's war cabinet agrees regular supply of fuel into Gaza. The cabinet has agreed to allow 140,000 litres of fuel into Gaza every 2 days after a request from Washington amid acute shortages that threatened aid deliveries and communications in Gaza. Earlier, Israel said it had agreed to allow 2 fuel tankers a day into the territory. The agreement also outlines that a further 20,000 litres would be allowed to power the telecom companies to prevent further blackouts. And United Nations officials are warning hospitals are at crisis point in Gaza. Briefers told the UN General Assembly meeting on Friday that there is no medical care available in northern Gaza. According to officials in Gaza, more than 11,000 people have died since conflict began 6 weeks ago after a surprise attack on Israel by Hamas. DD India's Sally Patterson reports.
The Gaza Health Ministry says more than 50 patients, including infants, died at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital due to power and oxygen shortages in recent days. The World Health Organization warned of the dire conditions for women in Gaza, up to 200 per day, giving birth in what they describe as the worst imaginable conditions, many with no anesthetic. Israel's military has raided the hospital, saying it found weapons Hamas was storing and military gear in the complex. It accuses Hamas of using civilians as human shields. UN briefers say more than 41,000 houses have been destroyed or severely damaged since fighting began. And more than 1.5 million Gazans are estimated to be internally displaced. UN Relief Chief Martin Griffiths said across Gaza, but particularly in the north, food and water supplies are running perilously low. This comes as Israel announced it has agreed to allow 140,000 litres of fuel into Gaza every 2 days, following a request from Washington. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
And Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Friday, where discussion on the Israel-Hamas conflict took the center stage. Both the leaders were meeting in hopes to find common ground on trade, migration and defense, despite views that are far apart on ongoing crisis in Ukraine and Israel. During a joint press conference, German Chancellor showed his support to Israel and said that Israel has a right to self-defense.
Weil es unsere Nachbarregion ist, kann das, was dort geschieht.
Israel has a right to self-defense. It was a terrible, brutal attack carried out by Hamas. On children, on the elderly, on peace activists, on those who have campaigned for reconciliation between Israel and the citizens of Gaza. For example, on young people celebrating. And that is why it is unacceptable that there is still a great danger of rockets being fired at Israel. And that is what the right of self-defense is all about. At the same time, it is of course important to use every opportunity to reduce the number of civilian casualties, and to bear this in mind. In everything we do, we should act accordingly.
2016
While Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan called for humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza.
Boşta olsak bu kadar rahat konuşamayız.
We also need to discuss another important point. How can we solve the problem? In other words, a humanitarian ceasefire. To what extent can Turkey make a contribution? Can Germany make a contribution? And how can we take these steps together? That is important now. And are we prepared to do this or not?
Ama bütün bunların yanında
And the International Court of Justice has ordered Azerbaijan to let ethnic Armenians who fled the Nagorno-Karabakh region in September return and ensure the safety of the remaining Armenians in the enclave. However, Azerbaijan's foreign ministry says it has already pledged to ensure all residents' safety and security, regardless of their origin, and also that it has not forced the ethnic Armenians to leave Karabakh. The measures are part of two competing legal disputes between Armenia and Azerbaijan before the ICJ. Both states have accused each other of violating a UN anti-discrimination treaty. All right, moving on. Ukraine and the United States will hold a special military industry conference in December. Kiev is ramping up efforts to produce its own weapons amid concerns that supplies from the West might be faltering. In his evening address, Volodymyr Zelensky said Kiev and Washington were actively progressing on the joint arms production issue. Listen in.
Детально обговорили реалізацію української ракетної програми, яка була розпочата.
During my visit to Washington, President Biden and I reached specific agreements on actions we can take together. This will undoubtedly strengthen both Americans and Ukrainians as well as our partners. Collaborative production always strengthens. In December of this year, a special conference will take place, bringing together Ukrainian and American industries, government officials, and other state actors, all those involved in organizing our defense.
Про цілком конкретні.
And Ukrainian Frontline Medics at a stabilization point in Donetsk region provide the first treatment for wounded soldiers. The flow of patients is severely testing the team deployed with 47 separate mechanized brigade. The medics say there are not enough trained medics, including trauma specialists, to cope with the workload.
We manage here at our stabilization point, but when there is a huge influx of wounded, the work is very intense. All staff are involved. So much depends on the volunteers. Medical supplies are provided by the brigade, but a huge part of all we have has been supplied by volunteers. Things would be very difficult without them.
All right, now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Fires continue to flare in the Brazilian Pantanal, the world's largest wetland, with more than 2,300 fires reported in the first few days of November, according to local officials. The fires began in October and have already devastated 35,000 hectares, a situation made worse by drought and extreme heat. Aerial photos of Grindavik and its surroundings in Iceland on Friday revealed cracks in the earth as raising fears of an impending volcanic explosion remain. Seismic activity last weekend prompted authorities to evacuate nearly 4,000 people from the fishing town of Grindavik. Authorities said they were preparing to construct a large dike designed to divert lava flows. A loggerhead turtle in Argentina was brought back to life by an animal foundation's intervention after it was entangled in fishermen's nets. Specialists in marine life rehabilitation took charge of the turtle's care. The species deemed vulnerable by the World Wildlife Fund highlight the importance of such rescues. At the Paris Garden, visitors are being greeted by lighted tigers, peacocks and elephants, with the winter theme being biodiversity in jungle. Giant replicas of discrete animals have been displayed to showcase the importance they hold in the ecosystem. The light show will remain open till January 21st next year. All right, we'll slip into a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. 6.7 magnitude earthquake strikes Philippines, 6 die, 2 missing. Spain's socialist leader Pedro Sanchez sworn in as Prime Minister for another term. And ChatGPT company OpenAI sacks its CEO. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. US President Joe Biden officially transfers the chairmanship of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation to Peruvian counterpart Dina Boluarte on Friday. The handover ceremony was held at the 30th annual APEC Economic Leaders meeting on the final day of APEC Leaders Week in San Francisco. Biden and Boluarte exchanged greetings as the US President formally transfers the APEC chairmanship for a year-long period. The leaders' meeting in San Francisco brought together political and business leaders from 21 member economies. So Finland ordered the closure of 4 border crossings with Russia as the government sought to stem an influx of asylum seekers that it says was caused by Moscow. The Finnish border guard said that barriers would be put up at 4 out of 9 border crossings with Russia at Valima, Nuijama, Imatra and Nirala in its southeast, and it will remain closed for all traffic until February 18 next year. The government has accused Moscow of sending migrants to the crossings to retaliate for its decision to boost defense cooperation with the US. According to the border guard, about 300 asylum seekers have entered Finland this week, most of whom are from Iraq, Yemen, Somalia and Syria. On the other hand, the Kremlin said that Finland is making a big mistake and that the move will destroy their bilateral relations. So Pedro Sanchez has been sworn in for a new term as Spain's Prime Minister in a ceremony at the Royal Palace in Madrid. To clinch his fresh mandate, Sanchez was forced to make a controversial deal with Catalan separatist parties, sparking vast protests in Spanish cities. DD India's Giles Gibson reports.
This was the final ceremonial step for Pedro Sanchez after weeks of tense negotiations going on behind the scenes to try to clinch this fresh mandate as Spanish Prime Minister. What we saw at the Zarzuela Royal Palace in central Madrid was Pedro Sanchez swearing an oath of office and then shaking the hand and posing for some photographs with Spain's King Felipe. Now, this fresh mandate was secured by Sanchez in a vote in the Spanish Parliament on Thursday, and he was able to get over the line due to support, of course, from his own Socialist Party, as well as the left-wing grouping Sumar, and crucially, 2 Catalan separatist parties. Now, the price of their support in that vote was a draft bill that's been put forward which would give amnesty to hundreds of people who could face prosecution for their role in efforts to push for independence for the region of Catalonia. Now, this draft bill has been widely condemned by opposition parties. For example, there's been some very strong words from Alberto Núñez Feijóo, who is the leader of the Partido Popular, or the People's Party, and who was Sanchez's main rival to become Spanish Prime Minister during the elections that we saw over the course of the summer. Feijóo saying that Sanchez is guilty of pathological ambition in making this deal with these 2 Catalan separatist parties. Since that legislation was announced, we've also seen rolling protests on the streets of Spanish cities, with thousands of people coming out onto the streets of not just the capital Madrid, but also other cities including Seville and Malaga. And what we are expecting over the course of the coming weeks is that as Sanchez tries to get this draft legislation approved by Parliament, that those protests will only intensify. Giles Gibson in Rome, reporting for DD India.
A magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck the southern Philippines on Friday, killing at least 6 while injuring dozens and damaging buildings. Local disaster officials say search operation is going on for 2 other missing people. The offshore quake struck off Mindanao Island on Friday afternoon at a depth of 60 kilometers. The Philippines lies with the Pacific Ring of Fire, where volcanic activity and earthquakes are common. In a shocking move, ChatGPT maker OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has been ousted. The company said the board lost confidence in Altman's ability to lead. This decision has sent shockwaves across the tech industry. OpenAI's Chief Technology Officer Mira Murati will now serve as interim CEO. The company said, adding that it will conduct a formal search for a permanent CEO. Backed by Microsoft, OpenAI kicked off the generative AI craze last November through its ChatGPT chatbot, which became one of the world's fastest growing software applications. India's Khadi and Village Industries Commission is participating in the 42nd India International Trade Fair at New Delhi. Khadi India Pavilion in Trade Fair reflects the theme of vocal for local, displaying a wide range of products of New India's new Khadi. DD India correspondent Kriti Vadhera reports.
Minister for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Narayan Rane inaugurated Khadi India Pavilion at the India International Trade Fair. A glimpse of the products of New Khadi of New India has been presented through 214 stalls in the Khadi India Pavilion. Khadi India Pavilion is showcasing the products manufactured by skilled artisans of the country and also to promote the initiative of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Vocal for Local and Self-Reliant India.
हमारे माननीय पंतप्रधान नरेंद्र मोदी जी खादी को बढ़ावा दे रहे हैं। जो अब पहले की खादी अभी तो अलग-अलग फैशन में, डिजाइन में खादी आ रही है और यूथ लाइक कर रहे हैं।
In this pavilion, the artisans of the country have been provided a momentous platform to exhibit their art.
देश में उद्योग बढ़ने के लिए, प्रोडक्शन बढ़ने के लिए, जीडीपी बढ़ने के लिए ये मेला का उपयोग होगा। लोगों को जानकारी मिलेगी अलग-अलग प्रोडक्शन निकालने के लिए।
The government is appealing everyone to buy indigenous products so that millions of artisans associated with Khadi and village industries in rural areas get livelihood opportunities.
Right from the freedom struggle, Khadi has become a national icon for Indians. Khadi still prevails to empower Indians through the employment it is providing to the local artisans in rural areas, and government is not leaving any stone unturned to become vocal for its local artisans. With camera person Radhe Krishna, I am Kriti Vadhera reporting from New Delhi for DD India.
Let's take a look at other stories making news today. The efforts to evacuate 40 trapped construction workers in a tunnel in northern Indian state of Uttarakhand have entered their 7th day. The authorities have intensified the operation. Some progress has been seen as a heavy-duty drilling machine penetrated 24 meters of rubble on the Char Dham route. The Election Commission of India provides a facility of home voting to senior citizens aged 80 and above and those with 40% disabilities to cast their vote from home using the home voting facility. A polling team comprised of 2 polling officials with a videographer and a security person visit the electoral house and get the elector to vote on the postal ballot, maintaining complete secrecy of the vote. The much-awaited Indian festival of Chhath Puja begins with the ritual Nahai Khai. It is the first ritual of the 4-day festival that sets the tone for the rigorous 36-hour fasting ahead. As per Indian mythology, Chhath Puja festival is dedicated to the sun god and his sister Chhati Maiya, the daughter of Lord Brahma. And renowned Indian sand artist Sudarshan Patnaik has created a sand sculpture of a 56 feet long Cricket World Cup trophy with the message "Good luck Team India" at Puri Beach in Indian state of Odisha. India is set to face Australia in the final showdown match in the World Cup at the Ahmedabad's Narendra Modi Stadium on Sunday. So India will face Australia in the final of the Cricket World Cup after the latter beat South Africa by 3 wickets in the second semi-final at the Eden Gardens. Let's take a look at India's journey in the World Cup final.
Armed with a formidable batting unit and a strong bowling attack, India have stormed into the first World Cup final in 12 years after winning 10 games on the trot, the latest being a 70-run win over New Zealand in a thriller at the Wankhede Stadium. Here is a look at India's unbeaten journey into the World Cup final. Match 1, October 8, 2023, India vs Australia. India won by 6 wickets with 52 balls remaining. Match 2, October 11, 2023, India vs Afghanistan. India won by 8 wickets with 90 balls remaining. Match 3, October 14, 2023, India vs Pakistan. India won by 7 wickets with 117 balls remaining. Match 4, October 19, 2023, India vs Bangladesh. India won by 7 wickets with 51 balls remaining. Match 5, October 2023, India vs New Zealand. India won by 4 wickets with 12 balls remaining. Match 6, October 29, 2023, India vs England. India won by 100 runs. Match 7, November 2, 2023, India vs Sri Lanka. India won by 302 runs. Match 8, November 5, 2023, India vs South Africa. India won by 243 runs. Match 9, November 12, 2023, India vs Netherlands. India won by 160 runs. Match 10, November 15, 2023, semi-final, India vs New Zealand. India won by 70 runs in Mumbai. Sports Desk, DD India.
All right, so final will be played on Sunday against Australia. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.